Welcome back to the postgame show on the podcast. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis after Ohio State's 24-10 win over Wisconsin. Happy Halloween to all who celebrate. Landis, we weren't going to wear the costumes if they lost, so it was a little shaky there in the third quarter, right?
Yeah, I mean, even when it was 17-10, I was going to message you like costumes or no, and then TreVeyon Henderson saved us. I think 2 touchdowns is costume territory.
We would not want Bill's new mullet and my old Mickey Mouse onesie to go to waste. We're not going to talk about Halloween, though. I thought the Halloween segment that NBC did was too long. I don't care what those people look like when they were kids trick-or-treating. We want to start with the best thing from this Ohio State win. We want to note that Ohio State, in its 3 competitive games this year, they beat Notre Dame 17-14, they beat Penn State 20-12, and now they beat Wisconsin 24-10, and they all count the same as if they won 100-0. So this is one of those where I do think clearly with this team against good opponents, nobody is in the business of critiquing the how, right? I mean, Ryan Day never is, but I think most of the fans, Landis, don't you think they've reached that point where you take a win like this against a solid football team in a tough place to play and run home 8-0?
After the fact, yeah. During it, not so much, which is understandable. But yeah, I think after a nice 2 touchdown cushion, you can certainly and could approach it that way, and I think probably should approach it that way for now. It doesn't mean it's not worth diving into and dissecting some things.
Yeah. Ohio State favored by 14.5. They won by 14. Like, in a lot of ways, this is not a shock how this played out. I don't know that anybody thought Ohio State was going to drop 45 on Wisconsin in this game, but we like to start with what did you like? And I know what you liked is something that you sent out to our texters late in the game, which is you believe this was potentially the best game TreVeyon Henderson has ever played as a Buckeye.
Yeah, I think it was. Like now that it's over, a little more time to think about it. I think there's only really one other game you'd put up there in competition with it, and it's the game he had against Penn State as a true freshman back in 2021 when he rushed for 152 yards, and a game that was fairly close there too. They won it at home. He has had more rushing yards. He had 270 against Tulsa as a freshman. This goes as his second largest rushing total, 162 yards on 24 carries and a touchdown. He adds 4 receptions for 45 yards on top of that. So they needed every bit of it in this game, and he iced it with a long touchdown, 33 yards, which I thought was a fantastic run that showed good vision, good patience, good balance, and his explosiveness. Like, he looked fresh after 3 games off, which you would expect, but then he played like the difference maker that I think everyone hopes he can be for this offense. So yeah, I'm like firmly there. I think this was the best game he's played.
Ryan Day said in the postgame that Emeka Egbuka was close, and they decided not to go with him. TreVeyon Henderson, by all accounts, has been close for several weeks now. But if this is the end result, it's like, well, you waited and you got that. 24 carries for 162 yards. This is just the second time in their careers, after coming in together in the same recruiting class, that Marvin Harrison Jr. has 100 receiving yards in the same game where TreVeyon Henderson has 100 rushing yards. The other was against Michigan State last year, and that wasn't that much of a game. Like a game like this, we had said, right, Marv, Stover, plus the defense, and it's over. This is sort of like defense, Marvin Trey, get out of the way. Like, right, that again, I don't think you need incredibly balanced offense. I don't think you need necessarily consistent offense. This is not a team with a real high success rate right there. It is about sort of in big moments, getting plays from big guys. It's very difficult with TreVeyon Henderson, Landis. Like, you never want to take him for granted, but on the other hand, it's just mostly an injury conversation. It's sort of hard to count on him too, but man, is this a reminder. It's like, okay, if there was, I was kind of at the point where, like, no, I think just Marv might be enough. And it's like, oh, okay, well, if it's Marv catching it and TreVeyon running it, that really might be enough. Like, that combo. What do you think of that combo moving forward for Ohio State if they can keep it on the field?
I think it's really hard to stop an elite passing attack and a rushing attack that keeps you honest. And they were talking a little bit about that during the broadcast. Like, when Ohio State runs the ball well, they're really hard to defend because then they get the play action pass game going. You're caught in between. Do I load the box? Do I not load the box? And if we do load the box, we got to figure out Marv. If we don't load the box, then we got to figure out how to stop this run game. Like, it's what good offenses do. They find a little bit of balance, or maybe not even balance. explosiveness both ways, which I think they certainly had in the running game at times tonight. Probably didn't have enough of it in the passing game, but yeah, this is what it needs to look like probably moving forward, because I don't know that they're ever going to hit that gear where they're throwing 6 passing touchdowns a game like we've seen in the past. So I think this is more or less what it needs to be.
24 carries for TreVeyon. 12 of them went for 3 yards or fewer. 12 of them went for more than that. And the ones that went for 4 yards or more, there was a 9-yarder in his first rush of the game went for 9. There was a 10-yarder in the first half as well. But in the second half, there's a 25-yard run, there's a 12-yard run, and there's the 30-yard touchdown run. And I do think, has everybody come around on, if TreVeyon's going to be your guy, there are going to be times when you hand him the ball and on 1st and 10, he gets a yard.
Mm-hmm.
Or on 2nd and 6, he gets -2. But that it's worth it because the 30-yarder's coming. The 60-yard touchdown against Notre Dame is coming. I have a terrible memory, but there's games last year. The touchdown run tonight reminded me of a touchdown run late in the game last year.
Was it Penn State last year?
Was it Penn State last year?
Yeah.
That like right when it's like, oh my gosh, this game is in the balance. It's like, no, it's not. TreVeyon, he ends games. Is that, maybe it's not, if you were drawing up the perfect running back, maybe that's not what you would draw up, but you take what you have. And is this offense at a point where it can handle the 2 yard, the -1 yard that you're going to get every now and then, because you can almost count on the fact that a big game-breaking run is out there if you just keep trying?
Yeah, probably. Like you said, it's maybe not the ideal situation, or certainly the most desired one. But I think given what they have available to them in the running back room, coupled with the fact that they clearly don't want to play Dallin Hayden because he didn't touch the ball today. Yeah, I think that's probably what they've settled on, and I don't necessarily think that's wrong, right? I've said all along that TreVeyon must have a place in this offense, regardless of who it is getting the most touches at running back. But I'm also at the point now where if that guy's not going to be Dallin Hayden, like at all, then this is probably where I'd be most happy. Yeah.
Can you take us through? Can we talk about the touchdown run? Because again, like we've vowed here, we've learned our lesson since the Notre Dame thing. Like, yeah, they do everything perfect. No, are there people in the comments probably upset with some of the plays Kyle McCord made? Yeah, but that run at the end, the way they blocked that up, I think we have to talk about the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr. and Julian Fleming both made blocks on secondary players to allow TreVeyon to finish it off. But the offensive line was moving people, and it felt like Trey not only hit one hole, but also sort of hit a second hole, because you can see the cutback lane and he hits that. It's like, oh, if he just hits that, it's like a nice 11-yard gain.
Mm-hmm.
But then he sees the escape hatch, and then he's out the door for the touchdown. Like, how did that work? Why did that work? What did that tell you?
So one of my main frustrations, I think, with TreVeyon Henderson has been his just sort of insistence on hitting everything wide. Like if it's a wide zone play, it's going wide no matter what. And where you've seen guys like Dallin Hayden and earlier this year, Chip Trainum, I think, excel more on those kind of runs is when they let all that get washed down and then hit the cutback lane. And that's where this run play really takes off. That's what like Trey Sermon was doing in the last 3 games of the 2020 season. Is what J.K. Dobbins did really well. And TreVeyon, just for whatever reason, doesn't always see that, doesn't feel comfortable with doing it. I don't know what it is, but he did it on that play. He cut it back at kind of against the grain of that outside zone play, and then read a pretty good block down the field from, I think it was Josh Fryer. He kind of like cut off the back end of Josh Fryer, made a little juke to his left and found that escape hatch that you're talking about and turned an 11-yard run into a 33-yard touchdown. And that's what he does, right? I think any other running back in Ohio State's room can make the initial read that TreVeyon made and make that an 11-yard gain. I don't know that anyone else in that room can turn that into a touchdown the way that TreVeyon did.
I think that's why it reminded me of the one last year, because the one last year he hit inside too. It just, whenever he hits something inside, we know what he looks like when he gets to the edge, right? When he has that vision inside, it's so valuable to the offense. And I liked like the second level vision he had there. Like it almost like wasn't there initially, but he knew it was going to open up, and again, Julian and Marv did their job, right? I mean, it's just Julian Fleming is such an interesting spot. He had a deep ball that he probably could have caught tonight. He clearly was battling something with his shoulder that seemed like it certainly influenced that. But that guy blocks, man. Doesn't that guy block? And it's like, hey, what happens when you block? I don't know. A receiver blocks a safety and a 12-yard run turns into a 30-yard touchdown.
Yeah, I mean he's excellent at it. I think he's been really good at it all year. I'm sure people can pick out a time or two where maybe he missed a block, and the expectation is be perfect in all of your perimeter blocks. Then that's a high bar to clear, I suppose. But I think I mean, there was a time, and maybe this has changed now, but there was a time earlier this year where they had played a couple of games and Julian Fleming was their highest graded run blocker, which I think tells you probably all you need to know about the impact that he has on the offense. If they could get some other guys blocking as consistently as he does, and this run game might really take off.
For the people who are listening on a podcast and are not watching on YouTube, you look good in a mullet. Have you
I feel pretty
considered
good.
this?
I feel pretty great. Yeah, it's hot.
Like this is I don't even think it looks like a costume anymore. We're 11 minutes into the show. I've forgotten this isn't how you look every day. Could you wear this Tuesday?
I think I could. I wore it earlier today in my house, and my dog barked at me because she didn't recognize me. I was a different shape with this mullet on my head.
What's your baby? Is your baby like your mullet?
He looked at me pretty confused. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So TreVeyon, like that TreVeyon, and here's the interesting thing about this offense, right? If we're coming around on the idea, 2002 against Notre Dame, they had a 3-point lead entering the fourth quarter, and they wind up having to win the game on the last play of the game, and they win by 3. They have a 4-point lead going into the fourth quarter against Penn State. They pull away. They win by 8. They have a 7-point lead tonight. They put it away, win by 14. This is a team that is built, I think, to play close games. We have plenty of time to talk about Rutgers, right? I don't know if they're going to blow Rutgers out, honestly, like the way Rutgers plays defense. And like, that's fine. Do we think everybody is there? Because here's the thing. And again, Emeka didn't play tonight. And Emeka was the guy who Emeka and Trey, as we talked about before, put away the Notre Dame game. If you have 3 guys, healthy Emeka, obviously Marvin, obviously Trey when he's like this, when he's healthy. You have 3 guys capable of putting an opponent away every time they touch the ball. And that's the team that you take into the fourth quarter. Regardless of how you've looked, that exists. I think that exists, like, as long as they're reasonably healthy, even if the offense looks kind of terrible, I think they have 3 guys who have a chance to put a team away. So when you have a defense that is not going to let an opponent get away, and it's just an unusual team. It's kind of like a low-scoring team that features incredibly talented 5-star recruits and future NFL stars who just aren't putting up 40, right? But I had the Washington game on my second TV while I'm watching this Ohio State game. Washington barely won. Washington's chucking the ball around. Their defense can't stop anybody. Second week in a row, I thought Washington would bounce back. They didn't bounce back from anything. And there were times I think Ohio State fans have thought, oh, man, kind of wish Ohio State played like Washington. You don't now. Not right now. Not complimentary football, not across the board. You wouldn't want to be Washington. You'd want to be Ohio State. Kalen DeBoer would kill for this Ohio State defense. So now this formula, because it's different than so many defensive teams. It's a defensive team with a bunch of NFL guys who can go off at any second. It's an almost odd formula, but man, could work.
It is a weird formula that I do think like changes the tenor of games. Like the mere threat of Ohio State's explosiveness on offense, and we've certainly seen it, right? We've even saw it at points today. Like they had a fair amount of passing plays that went for like between 15 and 30 yards. Like that, I think that is explosiveness, or just on 70-yard touchdowns. I feel like the teams play them like that's always in the back of their mind, and it should be like that. That's what makes Ohio State, I think, different as a team that wins probably. I don't want to say more with defense, although maybe that's fair by this point, compared to some other teams that are like defense first or like ball control-y kind of teams. Like that explosive threat, I think, is a game changer for Ohio State. And it's not the problem is like it's not that they don't score every time they have the ball. It's that they don't score when they should. Like that is like they're still giving up or leaving too many points on the field, even if they're not we're going to score it every time we get the ball in our hands kind of Ryan Day offense we've seen in the past. Like, they still need to maximize some of these opportunities.
There certainly are things for Ohio State fans to be frustrated about, but let's stay on one more thing we like before we get into that, and let's continue to talk about this defense. Wisconsin was limited to 259 total yards. Wisconsin was 6 of 16 on third down, which is pretty decent. But they were obviously limited. Braden Locke, their backup quarterback, was 18 of 39 for 165. They lose their starting running back, Braylon Allen, who doesn't play at all in the second half. He went 10 for 50 in the first half. And then I think people know that Ches Malusi, who was their backup running back and would start for a fair amount of Big Ten teams, was lost for the season many weeks ago. So they're playing their backup quarterback, and they're down to their third string running back, who goes for 9 for 34 in the second half. But the fact remains, Landis, that, another team couldn't do much against Ohio State, and I just don't think after last year anyone should let that slide by. Holding anybody to 10, this is a borderline top 25 team. We know what's wrong with Wisconsin, but they're competent. Holding them to 10 is pretty good.
Yeah, I think so. The end of the first half, what Braylon Allen put the ball on the floor twice in this game, turned it over in a brutal way on Wisconsin's first possession of the game. He did not have a tremendous game before he ended up leaving due to injury. He is a hard guy to tackle. He's a hard guy to keep out of the end zone when he gets ahead of steam inside the 5-yard line. And he had 3 touches from the 2 and didn't score at the end of the half when Ohio State ended up holding Wisconsin to a field goal. Now, they got a little bit of, I don't know, good luck or whatever when the guy's knee was on the ground when what looked like a walk-in touchdown, but that was also kind of a bad throw that, I don't know, maybe Ohio State should get some credit for forcing Braylon Locke into. But to meet Braylon Allen basically at the goal line 3 times to keep him out of the end zone, I thought was among the more impressive stands I've seen from this defense in the last few years.
And it helped change the game, right? That is a huge, that was a really good call by Wisconsin to flip that little pass. It definitely worked, but it's also one of those things. It's now it's like Woody Hayes. When you throw, it's if only his knee wouldn't have been down. It's guess what? That can happen when you throw because you're trying to get it out fast. If it's low, the guy's knee might be down. That's baked into the equation. So if you're going to try to do that, you have to make sure you don't. So it's not just dumb luck. But I do think this defense, there are splash plays with this team. Right. There was Lathan Ransom had the run blitz late in the game. That was gosh, that was awesome. And I thought there was a play where Mike Hall destroyed a guy in the backfield, and then they zoomed in on him and showed the replay, and he just beat the center in a nanosecond and was practically in the backfield with the handoff. And there are now the difference with the defense is it's not I don't think that the defense is doing its job, right? Most of the time, not giving up big plays. And then maybe even if you move the ball, those splash plays defensively are coming, I think, too. Jordan Hancock had a beeline on a ball. He was a half step from a pick six maybe late in this game. They do have these playmakers, but they don't make plays every snap. But every now and then, Mike Hall just destroys a dude, and all of a sudden it's a loss of 3. Like that. Do you think that's what this defense is too? It's a very odd team. It's a bend but don't break defense that also gets splash plays from future NFL guys 6 times a game, which again is kind of an odd formula, but is working for them.
Yeah, and the bend but don't break is something I maybe would have said about them 3 weeks ago. I don't know that I'm feeling that much now. I think
10. Yeah, 10 is not a lot of bending, I guess, huh?
Well, yeah, and it's what do they have per play? Wisconsin averaged 4 yards per play. Like you said, they were only 6. I actually don't 6 of 16 on third down is not particularly good. I think that's fine, and a couple of those were later in the game, I think. So, whereas in a couple of games, it felt like teams were moving the ball between the 20s on them and ultimately stalling out. That hasn't happened in the last 2 weeks. So I think I don't want to say they turned a corner. Maybe it's just the nature of the offenses that they've played, but I do feel like they're being more aggressive, keeping teams behind the sticks a little better than they were earlier in the year, not giving up a lot of third and shorts that help sustain drives. And then, yeah, they are capable of making these splash plays. I think at all 3 levels of the defense. linebacker probably is a little bit of a distant third there compared to the defensive line and the secondary, but I think they get it at all three levels.
Wisconsin gets the field goal when, again, the goal line stand. Wisconsin gets a field goal on their last drive of the first half, but it's like a win for Ohio State, right? Like, it's not like Wisconsin carries a ton of momentum into halftime because Ohio State held them to 3. Then Wisconsin does come out. Their only 2 scores were like back to back, end the first half, start the second half. That drive start the second half, 7 plays, 75 yards for a touchdown. But then to end the game, punt, stop them on downs when Wisconsin was like forced in that situation. Like, again, so that drive, Wisconsin comes out, lock runs. They hit a little bit of stuff.
Yeah, they hit that one pass where there were like 2 missed tackles in the secondary, which is not something we've seen a whole lot of. Yeah.
Yeah. Denzel missed a tackle early. Again, that was a little unusual. It's like, okay, well, that's one. But again, even that wasn't a touchdown. Like, it wasn't a 75-yard play, even though that was a big play. But then 3 straight punts after that, because that's when it was like, okay, this might be should we call it like a bend, can't wear your mullet defense, right? That's when it's like, when they score that touchdown, you're maybe putting the mullet back in the box. And then the next 3 drives, they force them to punt. 3 and out, 10 plays, 45 yards, but force them to punt, and then another 3 and out, Landis. So, like, right when it felt like Wisconsin got back in it, the defense stopped them.
Can you ask Jim Knowles on Tuesday whether or not he's comfortable being a bend, but you can wear your mullet defense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you wore this mullet Tuesday, I think the Jim Knowles news conference would end with Jim Knowles wearing your mullet. I think that's how good he feels right now about how this defense is playing.
Well, I guess it's worth testing out then. I'll bring it with me on Tuesday. Yeah.
But
like Tuesday is Halloween, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's trick or treat on Tuesday night. Yeah. That's the point where, okay, it's like, that's a bad, right? Everyone talks about that. That's why you defer, so you can have the ball at the end of the first half, then get the ball again at the beginning of the second half. It works perfectly for Wisconsin, but then they shut it down. So if this wasn't a good defense, that only touchdown drive for Wisconsin would have led to something, but it didn't lead to anything. Now, again, maybe because they were on their 3rd running back and their 2nd quarterback, but the bottom line is it didn't lead to anything. That was it.
Which I think has been true of this defense all year. Like, things don't lead to other things. Things happen within the course of a game because it's football and you don't win every single down and every single possession. But whether it's like a big play within a drive, which have been rare anyway, I don't think they typically let those snowball. And then when a team does string a drive together, it usually doesn't lead to sustaining much of anything. At least it hasn't so far this year. So, and I just, there were times last year when I felt like that was true of last year's defense, but certainly the snowball effect happened at the end of the year where they just kept giving up big plays and big plays and big plays. Like, they haven't done it yet this year. And if you're in the back of your mind saying, well, they haven't really played anybody capable of doing it. Like, I think that's fair, right? I don't know that we're ready to, label this defense as fully past all of the things that where it's undoing last year until it starts playing some of those teams that ultimately got them for it. But I think it's okay to kind of savor the fact now that this defense is pretty steady and doesn't let things build up on them.
So let's talk about a couple specifics with the defense then. It was stuff we were, I'm sure everybody was noting during the game. They had a dime look that we haven't seen a ton of when Wisconsin, I think, was putting like 4 real receivers on the field together, and Ohio State answers with Denzel Burke, Davison Igbinosun, Jordan Hancock, and then the 4th cover guy is Cam Martinez. And then at least once when they ran that look, they had 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and a single safety deep, I think with Sonny Styles. Another time they ran that look, it was with 3 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and they had 2 safeties on the field. And Lathan Ransom was on the field, but they brought Lathan up, I think, and blitzed him, like brought him as a 4th guy. We haven't seen that a ton. I think we maybe were a little surprised that if they're going to a 4th cover guy in that situation, that it is Cameron Martinez. I know he's kind of next up in that slot position, but I don't know. I thought maybe there might be other guys they go to there.
It was weird because there were times prior to that where Josh Proctor wasn't on the field and Sonny Styles was playing for him. And up until this game, I don't think they started the year this way, because I do think there was a game or 2 earlier in the year where Cam Martinez was a part of the dime package. But then lately it's been the 3 starting safeties, Josh Proctor, Lathan Ransom, Sonny Styles, plus Jordan Hancock in the 2 corners, Davis Nigma and Denzel Burke. Like I think your clear 6 best defensive backs being on the field. And I don't know, I guess it's worth asking, like, is something up with Josh Proctor that you weren't playing him on every defensive snap? Because it was odd to me that Cam Martinez was out there and then Wisconsin targeted him on a 3rd and 13 play where the guy was wide open and Cam was kind of nowhere near him. I just I don't know. I don't want to rag on a guy, I guess, but I feel like Cam Martinez is giving up a lot of those plays more than he is stopping them. So I was pretty surprised that he was out there.
Yeah, just some unusual stuff. Josh Proctor. Has Josh Proctor been off the field for anything that mattered in the last month before tonight?
Before today, no.
Yeah, so that was a little hard to get our heads around, and it's also a little like Sonny as the deep guy, right? As the lone deep safety is also. Again, I was asking Sonny Styles on Wednesday, like, do you think he'll be a linebacker one day? He's like, yeah, maybe. I'm kind of big, and he was talking about how he's really comfortable when he's required to be down in the box. And that it's the coverage stuff that he's still getting adjusted to. And then we wind up in that world where Sonny Styles is kind of your last line of defense on a passing down. I'm not doubting that he can do that, but it's not what we expect. It's sort of an interesting alignment. And, if that's what they come out with on 3rd and 13 against Michigan and it doesn't work, like everyone's really going to be noting it. So I'm curious how they'll continue to work out that look.
Yeah. My thought that I sent to the texters was, and I'm assuming it has something to do with Josh Proctor, but let's, I guess, for the sake of my point, say that it wasn't that. What is so threatening about Wisconsin that you suddenly felt like you needed to change that up? Because it's just a weird time and place, I think, to put a guy who's struggled almost every time you put him out there in a spot, and then he ends up giving up a completion on a drive that ultimately ends with a field goal, I guess. So maybe it's not the worst thing in the world, but just more puzzling than anything. Like now, suddenly maybe the first thing I want to ask Jim Knowles about when we talk to him on Tuesday is why that was the case. It's weird.
Yeah, not a lot of teams, like Ohio State never does it. They never put 4 actual receivers on the field. So I don't know if it's just their response to that. When Ohio State goes like that, they have a tight end and a running back out wide when they go empty. They never have 4 real receivers on the field. I don't know how many teams do that, right? Do you feel like there's a lot of college? I guess Washington does it. Do you feel like there's a lot of college teams that are, it's like, again, I guess it's part of this air raid. Wisconsin has 4 receivers on the field. It's the new Wisconsin. But
yeah,
is it just that response?
I suppose, but that would be sound logic, I guess, but it doesn't explain taking Josh Proctor off the field. That would explain to me taking Sonny Styles off the field, but not Josh Proctor.
No, I know, but like everybody, we want Sonny to be on the field. So like Sonny's on the field, and now we're like, why was Sonny on the field? It's like, I don't know, because
it's purely why was Cam Martinez on the field?
No, that's true. Remember when they were doing the stuff and like Pete Werner was dropping back as the deep safety on some plays? Everybody, we were like, what? Yeah. It's like, it's the bullet, man. It's just life with the bullet. All right. Is there anything else about the defense you really want to cover specifically? JT was in there blowing up some plays. It was like for a moment there, it felt like JT might be hurt. Then it seemed like he was fine. What else about the D?
Well, we got to talk about Lathan Ransom, right? Getting hurt.
Yeah.
That did not look great. That was a non-contact. He pulled up immediately on the sideline. Austin told us, and I know they talked about it someone on the TV broadcast. Austin told us they kind of carted him toward the locker room, then put him in a wheelchair and took him to the back. And he did come back out without his helmet on. But any kind of non-contact injury is not a great thing to see. But what appeared to be a lower leg one, I think. I don't want to speculate on what that is, but I doesn't feel like it's a great situation for him.
What happens if he can't play? What do you think they do there?
I would guess that Sonny moves to the bandit position because maybe Jihad Carter, but he got hurt last week on special teams play against Penn State, wasn't available this week, was on crutches at the practice on Wednesday. So maybe he's a guy who you would look at there if he's healthy enough to play, and then you can keep Sonny kind of in his nickel role. But I think I think it's Sonny, or if you want to go back to Malik Hartford, maybe, who I don't think we saw out there today at all, unless he was on special teams. But I think those would be your top 2 guys to play bandit in place of Lathan.
All right. So the defense did its job once again. I do want to have a minor bit of a playoff discussion here. I think a lot of people know that the first playoff rankings will come out. On Halloween, on Tuesday evening. NBC did their little group playoff rankings, and I don't know if they're trying to horn in on Kings of the North or if we just give them credit. They had Georgia 5th. I was like, wow, that is some hot Northern action. But they also had Ohio State first. And, it's not anybody. Everybody has the same analysis of the playoff committee right now. We've been watching them do this. This is the 9th year of seeing how they operate. We know the deal. But do you think Ohio State has as good of a claim to number one as anybody right now?
Yeah, I do. I don't know that I'm at the point where I'd be surprised if they weren't number one, because there's enough to get into there with, like, I don't know, game control stuff if you want to boil it down kind of that minutely, if you're the playoff committee. But yeah, I think they have 2 good wins, helped out by Penn State not losing to Indiana earlier on Saturday. Notre Dame destroyed Pitt, so like the last thing that people will be thinking about Notre Dame is them running Pitt off the field. So yes, I think they have the strongest case. Oklahoma lost. Georgia hasn't beaten anybody. Michigan hasn't beaten anybody.
Yeah, Washington has not looked good for the last
Washington hasn't looked good. Yeah, so I think so.
Washington has a great win, but has not looked good. I even think this win count. This is something. This is another that 2 of their 3 biggest wins are on the road. Right. Again, I mean, for whatever Wisconsin isn't, they're a competitive football team. Right. Mm-hmm. So they will take that into account. We'll have time to talk about this before we get to Tuesday night. But while you have your mullet on, I'll ask for a prediction. Where will Ohio State be ranked on Tuesday night?
I think they'll be 2 and Georgia will be 1.
So Georgia looked pretty good again today. They've gone back and forth. It's we were complaining a couple weeks ago that it's like Kentucky beats a bunch of nobodies, and then it just sets them up that when Georgia beats Kentucky, everybody's supposed to go nuts. And then Georgia didn't play well again, and then they kind of handled their business against Florida today. Not that Florida is great. As much as Ohio State, I would say Ohio State has 3 wins better than any Georgia win. Is that fair to say? Is this Wisconsin win better than any Georgia win? I think maybe. I can look it up. I think it is.
Yeah, I think so.
But I still don't know if that's enough to carry the day. Georgia's best win so far, I guess the only ranked win is Kentucky,
which lost again today to Tennessee. Yeah,
it's 2-3 in the SEC. 5-3 Kentucky is their only ranked win. They beat South Carolina, who's 2-6. Their SEC wins are against 2-6 South Carolina, 4-4 Auburn, 5-3 Kentucky, and 2-7 Vanderbilt, and 5-3. They haven't beaten anybody. Ohio State's gonna be number 1. You can't say Georgia. You can't sit here in that mullet and say Georgia to me.
It's not who I would pick. You just asked me who I think.
Yeah,
I would pick Ohio State. Yeah,
I think it's too stark. I actually think they'll pick Ohio State. I think it'll be Ohio State, Georgia, Florida State, Michigan.
No Washington.
Washington looks problematic. I know the Oregon win's really good because Oregon beat Utah senseless today, but they've got the loss. So, and I do think, don't you think in that room there's going to be 13 people who are like, well, Michigan, they have some stuff going on, right? It's not, you can't even say it out loud. They can't talk about that, but it's in your head. And in a tiebreaker, you're like, who are we going to give the tiebreaker to? Like, well, Georgia or Michigan, Florida State or Michigan. I think they lose every tiebreaker while this stuff is happening. Yes?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And there's certainly, there's opportunity for even more to come out about that between now and when they pick those teams.
Yeah, I do. So I think Ohio State will either be 1 or 2 because, if they just go full resume, Ohio State's clearly 1 because they're ahead of Florida State on that. They're clearly 1 if they really just value that. And if they try to, take other things into account and Georgia sneaks past, but I don't know how anybody else will get past them. So they'll be 1 or 2. Okay.
I make one more point on defense before we move on to something else.
Yeah.
I just wanted to shout out Hero Canoe, man, for making an incredible play.
Yeah, he was in
a second down run play when the game is still in the balance and Wisconsin is quasi threatening to drive to possibly tie the game or cut into the lead. He just totally shut down a second down run by himself. And I was surprised to see him in there. But he looked like he belonged. That's like the second time I think this year that Hero Canu's been put in a game in a big spot and like actually kind of made a play. So I'm just like I wanted to shout him out, but also they need another guy, I think, to step up on the defensive line just to like play 10 snaps a game where you don't feel like you're going to be at a disadvantage, and maybe he's that guy. So that was noteworthy to me.
There's have been some nice little flashes for Ohio State this year. Carnell Tate, Jermaine Matthews, Sonny Styles, who's more than a flash, but like Hero Canu, like there's some stuff that it's some good young depth that is probably good. They don't need it more often, but they've had some guys who haven't played much who, when they've been called upon, have been pretty good. So, all right, let's talk about Kyle McCord.
Yep.
And people are not happy in a lot of ways, as we can see in our YouTube comments here. We will do a Monday show with our tech subscriber comments and questions. We'll come back with the podcast daily on Monday morning. Bill and I will do that. We don't have the ability to do that tonight, but if you want to be a tech subscriber, 614-662-4509. Sign up for a 2-week free trial. So, you know, we see everybody in our YouTube comments here, and we'll take this into account. The first pick is going to keep Ryan Day up until the Michigan game, right?
Yeah, it was bad.
So it was just a youngish, an inexperienced quarterback, better than young. You're in a third year, but you haven't been a starter for a full year yet. An inexperienced quarterback rolling to his right, sort of drifting to his right, and then throwing a pick on the right sideline. So it reminded me sort of the CJ Stroud pick against Oregon in week 2 in 2021. So then I went back and watched that play, and then it didn't remind me of it at all. So CJ Stroud, it's late in the game. It's not a rollout. He gets pressured and escapes to the right. He's trying to make a play. This was a planned rollout from McCord. He knew he was going to be rolling to his right on this play. CJ Stroud, it's 3rd and 18. He's got to do something, right? This is 1st and goal. Kyle McCord has all day. There's no pressure on this at all. CJ Stroud's losing. Kyle McCord's ahead. CJ Stroud's in start 2. Kyle McCord's, this is game 8 of this season. So all that this was the same as it was an Ohio State quarterback moving to his right. You said it right. Chuck it in the stands. And the fact that he didn't chuck it in the stands, again, it's not the throw. It's the eyes and the brain. And what were you seeing that made you think you should make that throw? That I think Ryan Day and Kyle McCord are going to have a 4-hour conversation about that throw, because Ryan Day has got to figure that out and make sure he does not do that again this season.
I just don't. I don't really get the, because he's got to have at least 5 intentional grounding penalties this year, and almost all of them are just like carelessly throwing the ball away because he felt like he was under pressure, didn't have anywhere to get rid of the ball. And then at that moment where he has nowhere to go with the ball, he just rifles it in the coverage in the end zone. Like I don't understand that. Both are bad, but they both don't like kind of sync up with to me for some reason. Yeah, that's the kind of play where like clearly at this point it wouldn't happen, and Devin Brown was injured in this game, so he wasn't available anyway. But that to me felt like the kind of play that if Kyle McCord did that like in the first 3 games in the season, Ryan Day would have pulled him out of the game immediately and put Devin Brown in the game. That was like I don't think we should probably use an experience for Kyle McCord anymore. But even if we want to be nice and do that for him, a guy in his first start can't make that decision. Like that was an incredibly bad decision.
Yeah, and like to be able to try to talk through like what did you see? What's the thought process there? And again, in a situation, and we'll talk. We're just going to end up talking about Kyle McCord in a bunch of different ways. I thought the run that he got hurt on was great.
Yeah, awesome.
It was a 3rd down run, and you and I had kind of been talking at times during the year about Kyle running, being decisive, when to go, when to not go. And I asked Kyle about that, and he was saying that you sort of have to know almost before the snap You know your play, you know the coverage you're expecting. You know, okay, if the first read is covered, maybe the second read. At what point in that play, at what point in the progression against the look that you're getting, when do you decide to go? And for a third down run there, I thought it was the exact right time. It was decisive. He didn't slide. He dove, like he put his body on the line to make sure he got it right. And it really mattered in the game. And just like that that was a great decision. And it's just that Ryan Day cares so much. It's all he it's decision making. Not that he's different than any other coach, but that's the whole position. Because if you could just get the ball out to Marvin and Mecca when he's healthy, and Cade Stover, who wasn't targeted tonight, and hand it off to TreVeyon, like a lot of, there's enough times when good things will happen. And, when Kyle makes the right decisions, man, oh man, like this thing can really work. And so they just have to almost get him, especially in tight games. You just have to go like almost 100% on your decision making. Sometimes you'll sail a ball, right? Sometimes a ball will be tipped. I even thought the second pick, and we don't have to go into it yet, the second pick, he just doesn't see the guy. He doesn't read that in the zone, right? But like the first one, I think that play, there had to be moments in practice when that play worked out exactly how that happened, right? Where it was covered that way, and then you chuck it in the stands. So
yeah,
it's just all about the decision making.
It is. And that play especially too, because it was such a deep drop and rollout. It's not like, there's nothing there. Let me pull it down and run for a little bit. Like he would have had to run 12 yards just to get back to the line of scrimmage with the way that play was designed. So you're outside of the pocket. There's receivers down the field. Just throw it as hard as you possibly can over their heads, 3 rows in the stands, and live the play on second down. And at the very least, make sure that drive ends with points, right? Like you can't be getting that close to the end zone and not getting away with points. And you certainly can't be throwing picks like that on, like, if it's fourth down and like you're going for it and you got to do something, no problem with it, right? His pick against Notre Dame didn't have much of a problem with it, even though I think it was a great throw. It's like, it's fourth down. What are you supposed to do? This is first down, man. There's absolutely no need to try to force that ball in there. I don't know I'm sure he'll get asked about it after the game, and Ryan Day will too. So I'll be curious what the line of thinking was there, at least the explanation. But you don't want your now 8 games or 9 games, I guess, under his belt starting quarterback to be doing stuff like that.
What did you think of the second pick?
I actually thought it was a really good play by that defensive back. Who was it? Ricardo Holman? Is that his name?
Yeah, who's getting Marv some trouble early.
He's a really good player who has, I think, I don't know if he's been Wisconsin's best defensive player this year, but he's probably like in the top 3 or 4. And that was a play where they kind of tried to run a clear out, I think, with Carnell Tate, just kind of down the seam and take that DB with him. And it seemed like he kind of felt that. He saw Marv coming across on the, I guess it was a dig route, kind of just an in-breaking route. And it's Ohio State's trying to hit Marv on a lot of those this year. And I thought that guy made a really good play, or at least showed really good awareness to put himself in the right spot. And Kyle just didn't see him. And I'm not letting Kyle off the hook when I say that the guy made a good play, because I think there have been other times this year where Kyle has not seen things particularly well, and he didn't see it on that play. But that was not really like an egregious mistake. I think certainly not the same way that I view the first one. That was just kind of like you're trying to set them up for something, and they end up setting you up and flip it on you.
So Kyle McCord was 17 of 26 for 226 yards. 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, and then the fourth down fumble that did go down as a fumble. That's the third turnover for him. CJ Stroud had 2 multi-pick games in his career. Justin Fields had 3 multi-pick games in his career. So guys have games like this, right? I mean, it's like that Nebraska game for CJ was just kind of a wonky game sometimes. And I do think, early on, Wisconsin did a pretty good job of making it difficult to get the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. They clearly what did you think of, like, Cade was just a non-factor? Was that them just keeping him in blocking? Did Wisconsin do something to take him away, or did it just not happen?
I want to go look at, because PFF will break that down for you. I won't be able to see it till Sunday, like how often he did stay in on passing snaps, because it did felt like he was in there more than he normally is. I think last week against Penn State, like he was hardly in at all on passing snaps. Um, I, and there were times where they would show the reverse angle where I thought like they were doing a pretty good job covering him, and perhaps even like rotating their coverage to him. Like, are we in a world where teams are like
Yeah.
scheming up to take Cade Stover away from Kyle McCord?
Yeah. Welcome, Cade. Welcome to the world of putting up big numbers and all of a sudden being part of the game plan. 10 targets to Marvin Harrison Jr. for 6 catches. 5 targets to TreVeyon Henderson for 4 catches. 3 targets to Julian Fleming, 2 catches. 2 targets to G. Scott for 2 catches. 2 targets to Chip Trayanum for 2 catches. 1 to Carnell Tate for 1 catch. Checkdowns to Trey, right? Which again, they'll take that, right? Like that's part of, because it wasn't necessarily screens or a million things designed for TreVeyon. It's like, okay, there's nothing there. Take Trey and he'll go get something for you. If this is like the version of Kyle McCord, it's like, whatever you do, never throw a pick like that again. If that involves a healthy amount of checkdowns, I think this offense is okay with that too.
I think so. And a lot of those were on shot plays. Like, it's not that like Ohio State was trying to be aggressive throwing the ball, and we don't get to see those routes develop on the field when we're watching it on television. Although I think had guys been running open deep and Kyle McCord was not throwing it to them, Todd Blackledge would have said so. And usually we'll get a replay or two of that when it's happening. So I'm going to assume that Kyle wasn't being a little gun shy on those plays, and I think was just kind of making the right decision when the deep throw wasn't there, and then taking the check down the TreVeyon or Chip. Chip made a great play on one of them, by the way. That he cut the ball like 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, made a cut, lowered his shoulder, kept the drive alive, and like both touchdown drives. Or I guess, yeah, both touchdown drives. Chip made incredible plays. That third down play, but then on the first touchdown drive, he had a great blitz pickup on a completion to G. Scott Jr., where if he doesn't pick up that blitz, Kyle McCord's getting sacked, which in this world might mean it's a fumble, but at least it is knocking the drive off schedule, and that drive got to stay on schedule, and they scored at the end. So I thought Chip didn't like run it all over them, but I thought he had that huge catch, and this was maybe his best game as a blocker, both as a pass protector and on some of those outside hitting runs with Xavier Johnson. He was crushing people.
So I want to get to the offensive line, but as we kind of finish up Kyle here for now, like is anybody expecting him to get to CJ Justin, like elite Ohio State quarterback level, like this year? I don't think anybody is. Certainly the people in the YouTube comments are not. That is it okay for everyone to like sort of let go of that? I don't even know if it's an expectation, but maybe a hope. Right? CJ, by the end of his first year as a starter, was a Heisman finalist. Kyle's not going to be a Heisman finalist.
Nope.
But like, so we're letting that go, right? That's out the door. So now we're at don't make mistakes. Take checkdowns. Let's have, hopefully Ohio State has a game plan for their sake that schemes open Marvin Harrison Jr. Emeka Egbuka is going to come back at some point, and you're going to have Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, Cade Stover, and TreVeyon Henderson on the field together, which is 4 guys that defenses have to worry about. And so manage the game, Kyle, right? Is that where we are? And by the way, you have a top 5, maybe better defense to lean on the other side.
We're probably there. And that was interesting to me that Ryan Day at halftime was asked about Kyle McCord turning the ball over and what he will tell him. And if it wasn't the first thing out of his mouth, it was the second thing. He said, manage the game.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that looks like. I don't think Ryan Day is ever going to operate in a world where he's not letting his quarterback take some chances and really throw the ball down the field. And it's not like, I don't think we're at the point where we like take all that away from Kyle, but whether it's his own doing or being coached to do it, he's got to play more under control early in games, because thus far his erratic play in the first half has not cost Ohio State a game, but you still worry about it happening. And you're right that it's probably I don't know, unrealistic, I guess I would say, to expect every single Ohio State quarterback to be like as good as Justin and CJ and Dwayne were. But it's not unfair to expect the quarterback to get better over the course
Yeah.
of 8 games, and I don't know that Kyle's done that.
So let me ask this. Does he need to get better for them to win the national title? Or could they win with this version?
No, not tonight's version, no.
So take away the turnovers, right? He doesn't make the first throw. Right? Take away the turnovers. And he gets a little better with the, there's some of the looseness. Again, like the Penn State thing, right? I mean, is his worst play of the game against Penn State happened to come on a play where Penn State committed a penalty. And it was linked, but also, he's got that in him a little bit. Like this version of Kyle McCord limiting turnovers, but otherwise playing like this. Yes? You're saying no. This level would not get them all the way there.
If you're going to tell me he's going to limit turnovers, and I think I would say yes. I'm terrified anytime someone gets near him in the pocket because his ball security is terrible.
His ball security is bad. I mean, it's one of those Braden Locke. You know what Braden Locke loves to do? Throw the ball out of bounds.
Yeah.
That guy was like, screen's not there, bang, right at someone's feet. I'm rolling out, there's nobody open, over the bench. And that's not a criticism. So it almost feels like, is the first half like Kyle time? Kyle's like, hey, Heisman's still in range. Watch this. And then when it doesn't work, Ryan's like, game manager time. Kyle's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then we get that. And then the defense shuts them down and everybody's good to go.
Yeah, I guess maybe I would say what we've seen out of Kyle McCord in the second half of most games is good enough for Ohio State. Yeah, I think maybe is how I say it.
I mean, really, almost everyone in the comments is like, well, if you take away the turnovers, of course it's fun. Right. It's like you say, well, if you take away the good runs, you only average 1 yard per carry. You take away the bad plays, you were a Heisman candidate. I get it. But like just take away the first one. The first turnover is so egregious. And is so like, you cannot do that. Take that away. Then that's points. It's a different game. Like almost like just take that away. And I think maybe it's good enough. What did you think of the Fleming deep ball?
I thought I'm okay, I guess, living in the world where any ball that hits the hands or body of an Ohio State receiver in a catchable way, you probably should catch it. Like that's the standard, I think, of that room. I thought he threw the ball to the wrong shoulder and late and behind and forced Julian Fleming to like contort his body to catch a ball like sort of like by his armpit while he was still running forward, and then also put that ball in a position where he invited the safety back into the play that could then crush Julian as he like dropped that ball and it hit the ground. So I did not think that was it wasn't an A ball. It was probably like a B- ball, but yeah, I guess a B- ball should probably still be caught.
Is we don't always have the YouTube comments on because we're looking at texture stuff. Are the YouTube comments always like this?
I don't know. I don't look at them.
Yeah, I think I'm going to turn them off. Like, here's the point. The point is not like defending Kyle McCord. The point is like, this is where they are. Can they win like this? And it's one of those things. Do you want to talk about how Ohio State can win or not win, or do we want to like judge every single player individually? Right? So they absolutely have guys on this team like who are not doing their job to the Ohio State standard. And compared to Ohio State quarterbacks of the past, this is not up to the Ohio State standard. But the defense is much better. Marv's nuts. Cade is the most productive tight end at like, I don't know, in a while here. And TreVeyon, when he's healthy, can do some stuff. Like the parts that are good, I think, have a chance to lead the parts that are okay, as long as the parts that are okay aren't bad. As long as the parts that are okay aren't making multiple losing plays. So, I mean, people, you can get caught up. If you want to get caught up in McCord sucks or whatever, like, feel free. But I don't like that. I'm not sure that conversation is going to end. I think the conversation we're on to is, what is the minimum level of play? What are the mistakes you can't make? What are the ways this team can function, this undefeated team, by the way, and have a chance to win a national title? And in the past, aren't we accustomed, Landis, to the quarterback leading the way? This is not a quarterback lead the way situation.
No.
So now it's like, okay, then what is it? And I think that's the conversation worth having. And then the offseason conversation is, can Kyle McCord get better, right? What can this be like in a world where Marvin's gone, right? All those things.
Mm-hmm.
But you do happen to have, it'd be, if CJ Stroud had stayed, they'd score 50 points a game and they'd win every game by 30 points. But there's an ebb and flow to everything. So he didn't stay, but guess what? In a world where you're breaking in a new starter at quarterback, who maybe, I don't know, but so far, he wouldn't be a first-round pick tomorrow. I don't think he'd be a first-round pick at the end of the year. Maybe is not playing at the same level that CJ Stroud and Justin Fields played at the end of their first year as starters. Same for Dwayne Haskins. But he happens to be throwing to 3 real dudes, handing it to a real dude, and playing with a real defense. So let's talk about what is actually happening and whether that can work. That's what I'm interested in. Isn't that what is like, you can wish for things and you can complain about all the individual pieces, or you can try to figure out, can this team win a national title, which I think they can with this Kyle McCord, as long as he doesn't throw that first pick. I'm not excusing every single bad play because we got to talk about the intentional groundings because there's something I want to talk about there.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make the backbreaking, what are you doing, inexcusable. Most quarterbacks wouldn't throw that pick. Don't make that play. And then I think they've got a real shot.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the frustration just enters the mind when you probably assume that he's going to do that at the worst possible moment when the stakes are the highest. And I guess he hasn't done that yet to this point, right? He didn't do it. I guess he almost did it against Notre Dame, but he ended up not doing it against Notre Dame. Didn't do it against Penn State because they got some help with a penalty call there. That was the right call. So yeah, like I think that you are correct, but I also don't, I guess, fault anybody if they're living in the world of like, it's hard for me to wrap my arms around that idea because I don't want to set myself up for disappointment when that play comes at the wrong time.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting conversation. It's just like, is the quarterback good enough? It's not the number one conversation. It's, is the team good enough? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the quarterback's part of that, but the quarterback, I think this year is not as much a part of that as it normally is. Right. And that's because the quarterback is not playing up to the standard, and also because just the defense is that much better. This is not 2021, where when CJ wasn't playing, where it was like, what are they going to do? And then what they were going to do is lose to Oregon. If Kyle McCord, and so this is, if we're just going to play like compare Ohio State quarterbacks, if Kyle McCord had the 2021 defense, they might have 3 losses.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
So if we want to say like Kyle McCord in year 1 as a starter is not as good as CJ Stroud was in year 1 as a starter. Okay.
I agree.
Or we could say defense is playing great. So like they're both true. It's just like, well, which conversation do we want to have more? I think they'd at least have 2 losses. If they have that, there's no way they beat Notre Dame with the 2021 defense.
No.
And I don't think, as bad as Drew Aller and that Penn State passing attack looked, I think they might have figured it out against the 2021 defense, right? Maybe.
I mean, that Oregon offense was not especially good, but they figured out
Anthony Brown, man. Anthony Brown.
They figured out the one play that worked a few times and won the game with it.
Yeah. That would have been the sound. Can Mike Yurcich and James Franklin figure out one play that works? Just one play.
It's a high bar.
All right. Let's talk about the intentional groundings, because I thought the last intentional grounding, when he's hurt. They bring 6. Okay.
I think they brought 7, actually.
Matt Jones and Chip Trainum ended up blocking the same guy, and Carson Hinsman and Donovan Jackson ended up blocking the same guy. So 2 guys came completely free, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's hurt. He almost, like, he was kind of walking like a guy on stilts on that play. He's like backpedaling, and he's like, my ankle's not functioning. I'm not sure what he's supposed to do in some of these situations. He's had some bad intentional groundings. He's also had some, my offensive line got absolutely smoked intentional groundings, and one's on him and one's not.
Yeah, I thought on that play, and they showed the ISO cam a few times, like Marv was 1-on-1 and won like immediately, and it would have been a back foot chuck it up prayer to Marvin, but I think I'm okay with that, especially when it's in single coverage. And he like
in a world where he's thrown 2 picks. I think he might be out of back foot, chuck it up territory at that point.
He threw it. That was the Marv's touchdown, second touchdown was one of those plays. Yeah, I'm okay with that in a world where he's throwing 2 picks, because the thing that he always says is like, if I look out there and Marv's got single coverage, I'm throwing the ball to him.
I thought they were in his face right away, though. You thought he could have gotten it out?
They were in his face right away, for sure. Like I said, it would have taken a back foot prayer, but I think a back foot prayer is better than a let me try to spike this ball out of the defender's feet.
I thought it was a fumble. Can I know? So clearly the defender tipped it, and you asked in our Slack, like, if the defender tips it, then does that mean it can't be a backwards pass? I thought it was a backwards pass that was tipped backwards. I didn't think it was a forward pass that was tipped backwards. I thought it was backwards. I like slowed it down and was looking at the yard marker and his yard marker. I thought the ball landed like significantly behind him. And I think it was headed that way. I thought they got incredibly lucky on that call. So there are moments where it feels like he's just like trying to get rid of it. It's a little hot potato at times, right?
Yeah. It's not great. It's like that. I mean, and that play's tough, right? In fairness, he has 2 guys basically running free at him, and he's hurt.
And that moment, he's as hurt as he was the whole game.
Yeah. No, yeah. And maybe like I can't remember what they called on that play. Like, can you call a slant? Can you call something a little quicker hitting than something that would have required him, I think, to hold on to the ball for probably at least 2 seconds. It did seem like too, like once it was pretty clear that he like could hardly move, that Wisconsin started coming after him a little more.
Yeah.
What's good coaching. That's what I would do too.
Were you making Tristan Gebbia, Cardale Jones comparisons in your head at that point?
No, I wasn't going that far. I thought after, because before they like called a timeout and he came to the sideline and he said like to Ryan Day, like, I can't something, and like pointed to his foot, which I'm assuming was like, I can't put weight on this. I can't run. I can't feel my foot. One of those things. Yeah. I was actually a little surprised they put him back in there.
I think maybe if Devin Brown was healthy, they wouldn't have.
Probably.
But yeah. But also Gebbia is just like a very interesting case. There's a part of me, again, this guy's a 7th-year college player who has started at Oregon State. And if you just like kept it to the basics, there's a part of me that thinks like he could probably run it, right? That it's just like, get it out, get it to Marv. If it's not there, throw it out of bounds. I don't know that it would be non-functional. I'm not calling for a quarterback change, by the way.
Okay.
You were you were stroking your mullet in a manner of like, what is Doug saying here?
Yeah, I mean, I won't pretend to have enough Tristan Gebbia knowledge to emphatically say what he can and cannot do in this offense. I think he is veteran enough to manage it if put in a position. Yeah, which I think he could have. I think he could have done enough to make sure you left Madison with a win. Yeah.
Do you think next week's important for Kyle? Like, is there something in particular that you want to see out of him?
All year I've wanted to see him operate with more urgency, because he doesn't. Okay. He just like, I said this last week, like to Berm in our Monday rewatch, and I probably got a little too fired up about it. Like, he took a sack with his foot on the 1-yard line. Like, he just doesn't. He doesn't have like awareness. Like, I don't should say that. Not that he doesn't have awareness, but like his awareness seems to slip at very inopportune times, and doesn't like seem to have a great feel for the pocket all the time. And it would just worry me if I'm an Ohio State fan. Like, I think you're well within your rights to be, and probably justified to be worried about some of it, because it's not even the missing the throws that he sometimes misses. It's just like when he's in the pocket and like it's clearly breaking down around him, he's just like, excuse me, he's just standing there, not holding the ball in a particularly secure way. And then it gets like knocked out of his hands. And I don't know, one of these days it's going to get picked up in return for a touchdown. Like, that would terrify me.
Yeah. We've gone from Kyle McCool after the Notre Dame game to Kyle too cool. Like, that's what you're saying. He's too cool under pressure. It's like, 4 guys coming right at me.
Yeah, there's a very fine line between like, I'm going to hang in here and I'm going to survey the field, and I know there's stuff happening around me, but I'm not going to let it phase my process, and I'm going to make the right decision to get the ball out, and also just like being totally aloof in the pocket and like truly unaware of what is happening around you in a way that is precarious.
That's there's a question for Day on Tuesday in there, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there has to be.
Like almost too calm in the pocket with as things are going wrong. All right, let's talk about the offensive line. Fryer got smoked at least once.
Yeah.
How are they doing?
Same, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of what they've been all year. Like, I don't think pass protection is an issue for them on every single snap, but when it looks bad, it looks bad.
Yeah.
And they probably there are more one-on-one losses than I think we're accustomed to seeing at the tackle position. And frankly, they're probably coming a little more from Josh Fryer at the moment than they are from Josh Simmons, if we're going to be fair to Josh Simmons. So I think Fryer's been like decent for a chunk of the year, but did not have had some of his maybe worst moments of the season in this game.
And the one where he got smoked, you noted this like right off the bat, and you can see it on the replay, right? There's a blitzer inside of him that takes his attention for a nanosecond, and then he's late getting outside over the guy because then that blitzer backs off. But then there's all other times when there are free blitzers get through a couple times a game, usually on them. It does feel like there still are moments in pass protection where they're not exactly 100% in tune with what their responsibilities are. And the result is, as we, again, that play I mentioned earlier, it's like there's two guys end up on one guy and somebody else runs free. And even beyond the times where it's like even that with Fryer, right? It's not just a physical loss. Like the physical, that guy just destroyed me. Like we said, Mike Hall destroyed the Wisconsin center on a snap. Is that happening all that much, or is it typically it's something in what they see then affects their process, and then that's when they get beat?
Yeah, you mean just like a guy lining up across from you, it's 4 down, no blitz, like they're getting their butt whooped. Like I don't think that happens actually all that often. I was waiting for that to happen last week against Penn State, and it happened maybe once.
Right.
No, I thought that the first one that we're talking about with Josh Fryer, I actually thought they had 3 guys there. One dropped immediately. One like took a step forward and I think drew Josh's attention and then ran with TreVeyon Henderson on the wheel route, which is where I think they were trying to go with that play because when they came back, I think the next drive on a 3rd down, they ran the same play to TreVeyon and he was wide open. But Josh's eyes were on that, and one of the inside guys, and then the outside guy beat him. I think it's that. I think that's probably the same with some of the stuff I see at center too with Carson Hinsman. I think it's more just like twists and stunts and blitzes and bluffs like can get them mixed up a little bit. I think that's true of probably most offensive linemen, right? Those are the things that are most difficult to deal with. I just maybe the breakdowns against those kind of looks are showing up a little more than they have previously. But I don't know that like I felt like the offensive line like took a step back today. I just think this is kind of par for the course of what we've seen from them for most of the year.
Special teams still an issue at times.
The punt return was pretty bad. Yeah. That was probably it, right? Like Jesse Mirko, I think actually punted pretty well in this game. Couple inside the 10 that were big.
Like a big return at a bad time.
Big return at a bad time where the defense stood up. I think there was a 42-yard punt return that I think set Wisconsin up at the Ohio State 36, if I'm not mistaken. And then that drive was 4 plays, 0 yards, missed field goal for Wisconsin. So like the defense answered the bell there, but yeah, you don't want to be giving teams that kind of field position.
Yeah, 35-yard punt return. Mirko, 4 punts, 37.8 yard average, 3 out of 4 inside the 20. That's pretty
and at least two inside the 10. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we need to talk about Marv to wrap this up. He had come in, I think, 13, 13, 16 on targets. The last 3 games, he has 10 tonight, 4 straight double-digit target games, 6 catches, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. And the thing in the end, all the stuff that we talked about, and it's what everybody had on their minds before the season, what you and I talked about before the season. It's a combination of a new starting quarterback who was in a competition that went into the season and an offensive line with 3 new starters and 2 tackle spots that were as uncertain as Ohio State's been at the tackle spot in 2 decades. And the thing that you fear the most in that is those issues prevent you from utilizing the best receiver in the game. So we are talking about a game where they did have issues with both of those things, but they still managed to utilize the best receiver in the game. 6 catches, 2 of them for touchdowns. Like that's the defining. Get them to the game where Marv's a non-factor because every time Kyle tries to throw to him, he misses him. They had a couple miscommunications early that it maybe felt like, is this going to be one of those games? Or get to a game where they can't block it up to even let the passing game function in any real way. That's not the case. Even on a night like tonight that wasn't great, that's not the case. They gave Marvin enough chances to change the game. And in the end, that's the number one bottom line, I think.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I wondered that, we talked before the year about what's the statistical production going to be? It was well, probably less because he doesn't have CJ Stroud throwing the ball anymore, but you were fearful that it could be substantially less because of no CJ Stroud and whatever the offensive line was going to look like. And frankly, the beginning of the year, maybe you were a little worried about that, right? After the Indiana game and didn't really go off in the Notre Dame game, although he did get hurt in that game. But lately he's looked like what we've expected all year. So as long as they're living in that world, and I think they will be, especially if they're getting TreVeyon back, and Kate Stover will be more of a factor than he was today in most games, and Emeka Egbuka has some gravity to him that I think will pull some attention away from Marvin at times. I think they're okay. It's not always going to look pretty, the road getting there, but I think as long as they have that option available to them, they're better off than most teams.
Everybody's like, it's time to have the Marv Heisman conversation. We're talking about it. We'll start it. It's like, no, everybody started it. Everyone's having it. He's down to 12-1 right now. The odds I just looked at. So again, almost
who's ahead of him?
So the updated odds on DraftKings, as I look right now, Michael Penix is up. So he was at minus odds at one point a couple weeks ago. Michael Penix plus 280, JJ McCarthy plus 300, Jaden Daniels from LSU. He's not going to win. Plus 400. Bo Nix plus 600. Good game today against a good Utah defense. Jordan Travis, Florida State plus 700. Good game today for Jordan Travis. And Marv at plus 1,200. And then it goes to 25-1. So it's a 6-man race at the moment, according to the odds. And everybody thinks it now. That opportunity to be able, the first touchdown, similar to the last touchdown.
Yeah.
To the touchdown last week again, which is the line has to hold up enough for him to run all the way across the field. And they did a good job early on. That Hallman guy, the guy who had the pick, was doing a pretty good job on Marvin. And then they started putting him in positions to get different matchups. And they got a matchup there. The guy never had a chance. He was trailing Marv all the way across the field. Wisconsin didn't adjust. Nobody else picked up any coverage. And it's a credit to the offense for finding a way to do the number one thing they have to do, which is utilize his skills. Credit to Marv for making the play, but a credit to the offensive line and to Kyle McCord for doing what had to be done on that play to make it possible. You just have to make it possible. And then Marvin Harrison Jr. will handle the rest. And the same thing was the second touchdown. Was it the world's greatest throw? I don't know. Did you give him a shot? And I do think Kyle's done a decent job. You mentioned that earlier. Just make sure that you're giving Marvin enough plays. Make it possible. And he'll make something happen a pretty good chunk of the time.
Yeah, the first touchdown was mesh. And the linebacker in the middle of the field decided he was just going to truck Kate Stover and knock him to the ground instead of, I don't know, playing defense. And then
he's like, my guy didn't catch it. My guy had 0 catches today. Marvin Harrison Jr. is running by.
Marv is running with nobody around him. They should probably do more of that kind of stuff. They don't run mesh a whole lot. It's maybe a byproduct of some of the coverage they see, but I think more quick game in general is probably good for everybody. They also ran. This is not part of the Marv conversation, but I'm just reminded of it. They ran an RPO kind of slant/glance to Carnell Tate earlier in the game, a second level RPO that we've not seen them do a whole lot of. I think Kyle throws his best ball on intermediate slant routes. I don't know.
That was pretty well covered.
Yeah.
And he put it right in the right spot. Carnell made a great catch.
It was a great throw, yeah. But anyway, back to Marv. His second touchdown, I believe he was in the slot, and it was a slot fade, I
Yep.
think. Against, I'm assuming, whoever Wisconsin's nickelback is, or maybe it was even a safety. So they're still being intentional about that, which is good. He's great, man. Like I don't. They're doing a good. Like I guess that's one area where I would give Ryan Day and I guess like Brian Hartline and anybody else who's involved with it credit. Like they're doing a good job of making sure that they're scheming stuff up for Marv to make sure he's getting the ball, especially after not doing so enough, I think, earlier in the year. Like it's necessary, I think, for this offense, especially. It's not like last year. Last year, maybe you didn't worry about how open guys were because CJ was going to put it on them wherever they were. And I think the level to which they are open is much more important right now with Kyle McCord, quarterback, but they're doing a good job of scheming some of that stuff up, especially for Marv.
You want to talk about the Big Ten West? You think that's what everybody's been waiting for? Breakdown of the Big Ten West race. Let's do it anyway. Minnesota.
Did Nebraska win?
Nebraska did win.
Yeah.
Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Nebraska are all 3-2. Northwestern's 2-3 after beating Maryland. Purdue and Illinois are 1-4. So I don't know. Like there's 4 teams tied at 3-2. We're not going to like go through tiebreaker scenarios, but anybody could win that. And I actually think Nebraska might have the easiest schedule. So everybody who's tied at 3-2 like controls their own destiny. If you go win all your games and go 7-2, you're going to be fine. But they all have to bang heads against each other. Tanner Mordecai for Wisconsin, I think, could, the way they were talking, like he might be back by the end of this year. I don't know. Braylon Allen was on the sideline in a walking boot by the end of the game. Like I'm not sure. I'm not so sure Braden Locke isn't playing a little better than Tanner Mordecai was playing because he was making mistakes. Wasn't he making mistakes for them earlier in the year?
Yeah, he was. I wouldn't say like a lot of picks, but enough that you noticed.
And it gets easier in Indianapolis than it does at Camp Randall, but that's what it's going to be. I mean, we know. Thank God it's dying. Like that division, just like kill that division. And just don't make it Iowa. Can just like this. Nobody wants to see Iowa. Nobody wants to see Iowa. Matt Rule, Nebraska. Luke Fickell, Wisconsin. Hey, PJ Fleck. Well, that's just not Iowa, please. So the West is a mess to nobody's surprise. And did you take anything into the Ohio State-Wisconsin game after watching Penn State almost lose? Like, hey, that was a slobber knocker. Everybody's going to be worn down. Watch out, Ohio. Penn State got pretty lucky at the end, man, against not a very good team.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know that I thought anything differently. I kind of assumed that Ohio State would be feeling some effects from the Penn State game, like both physically and just coming down from a big win. I don't like. I think it's dangerous in college football to put too much stock, into individual game results like that. Like,
yeah,
weird things happen in college football, and like there's a lot of variance, and teams end up winning games by closer margins than you think they should, or like almost lose games, and then like the next week they'll come out and win by 40, and the only, I don't know, it's like the world you live in when there's 18 to 22-year-olds playing this game and not adults in the NFL. So Penn State didn't look particularly good. They pulled the game out, but I guess I didn't watch that and then think to myself like, oh, let me rethink everything that happened for Ohio State last week.
Yeah, and then in the end, I just don't think anybody was supremely surprised by the way this game shook down, right? Like, it's not about our picks, but we were all like right around this range, right? Like a 14-17, maybe 20-point win, but like not a blowout. Ohio State not scoring in the 40s. And, clearly Ohio State could have had more points. Wisconsin could have had more points, but I think where this settled at 24-10 is probably about right. And I think it's in the end reflective of where both teams are. It's unfortunate, right? You'd love to see Emeka Egbuka out there. You'd love to see Braylon Allen be able to finish the game. You'd love Wisconsin to be able to go their backup running back instead of their third string running back. But this is also where we are. And this is where teams get separated. And I do think like Ohio State's depth at certain positions has shown up pretty well this year. And like they've managed, we have to sort of keep in mind, the stuff that hasn't looked great between the Notre Dame game and this game. Like Trevon Henderson wasn't out there, man. And it's like that. This was a reminder. Think about how the Notre Dame and Wisconsin games would have gone if they didn't have Trevon Henderson for those games. Yeah. So just put him on the shelf until Michigan and then get ready to roll, right?
I guess. So that there's 3 games between now and Michigan. How many games has Dallin Hayden played? Can you like run out his remaining
I don't know.
eligibility but while still preserving that red shirt, of course.
Which was like Sonny
Yeah.
Styles wasn't out there for a snap, and I was like, are they redshirting
Are they
Sonny
redshirting?
Styles?
Yeah.
What are they doing?
Yeah.
Who are they redshirting Josh Proctor?
Yeah.
What?
I think
That's-
is there like, and I guess I'm not saying this like as a rebuttal to anything you said, but you said like Ohio State should have had more points, Wisconsin should have had more points. Wisconsin turned a touchdown into a field goal.
yeah.
Ohio State like had 4 times it should have scored and didn't score. Like it's not even like they settled for something worse than a touchdown. It's like they should have had 4 more scoring opportunities that they kind of bungled.
Yeah. Wisconsin probably should have had 14. Ohio State probably should have had 38.
Yeah.
So, all right, that'll wrap it up. Sunday, Buckeye Q.
Sunday it's the
Austin
Sunday.
Ward will have that.
It's the Sunday Blitz.
Sunday Blitz. There's so many shows I can't keep the names straight.
Right.
Landis and I will be back with comments and reactions from our texters, which will be like, okay, what we didn't talk about this, we didn't talk about that. This is what really matters to this team. Then obviously, as you guys know, we get into the new week coverage on Tuesday. Ryan Day will speak. Jim Knowles will speak. We'll have snap judgments after that on Tuesdays. And I think you guys are in the rhythm by now with us on the YouTube channel and wherever you listen to podcasts, you find the podcast. We hope this is not the end of Bill Landis in a mullet. It probably is the end until next year of me in a Mickey Mouse onesie. It's kind of hot. So we appreciate you guys joining us on the post-game show. Ohio State moves to 8-0 with a 24-10 win over Wisconsin for Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was the post-game show on the podcast.